Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Advisory Committee for the Town of Quispamsis for Tuesday, August 10th. Item number 2, can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Have a seconder on that?
So moved.
All in favor? Motion carried with a 5-0 vote. We'll move on to item 3, disclosures of interest. None being, we'll move on to item 4. Can I have a motion to approve previous minutes, please? Brent?
So moved.
Can I have a seconder on that? Brenda?
So moved.
All in favor? By a vote of 5-0, motion carried. We'll move on to the next item. The business arising from previous minutes. Can I have a motion to receive and file, please? Brenda?
So moved.
Can I have a seconder on that?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Motion carried, 5-0. Move on to the next item. Item 6, unfinished business, none being. We'll move on to new business. Item 7A. Could the applicant please come up to the podium? It's an application requesting to erect fencing with privacy slats along the property lines on 3 sides of the property of 20 Meteor Drive. Could you please come up and state your name for the record, and we'll get Jennifer to introduce the topic, please. It's up to you.
Okay. Michelle and Kathleen Van Dorn.
Okay, perfect. We'll get Jennifer to introduce it, then we'll
Perfect.
actually.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it is, pardon me, an application to erect a fence on the property line, and that is abutting 3 other properties. Staff don't have any concerns with the application. However, we did receive a concern from one of the neighbors, one of the abutting properties, and you would find that in your package. They were not in favor of the fence on that common property line between 24 and 20 Meteor. And I would like the committee to consider one additional condition for their consideration, and that is for the applicant to canvass the abutting neighbors and receive a signature endorsing their favor of the fence being placed on the common property line. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. You guys would have received the same package we did in the mail. Is there anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to members of PAC or the public asking you a few questions? No. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
The maximum of the property because behind we have a shed in the backyard, and if you take the 60 centimeters that you have to stay off the property line, that'll only leave us another 60 centimeters to go to the back of the shed if we have to do any maintenance, cleaning, or whatever. And that's a kind of a tight fit. So we figured, well, we'll ask at least if we can go right to the property line. If there's objections, well, willing to talk about it, but that was the main reason for going right up to the edge of the property.
Okay, perfect. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? Mark?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you, I have a question for Jennifer here. The setback is 60 centimeters, and the folks are asking for a 0.6 meters setback. That means the fence would be right on the property line. So would they damage the adjacent property if they put the posts and right on the property line? Or should they be a 0.4 meter setback request?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This isn't precedent setting by any means. We've had several applications, and I believe that they've been placed right on the common line. I think the reason that we did receive one concern is the person who submitted the concern stated that they had concerns about maybe damaging the fence during their regular lawn maintenance. So, but I know that we've had several applications, and I think, Dwight, you want to add to that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we've had this request in the past. Through you, Mr. Chair, if we could ask the people online to mute if they're not speaking, please. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, so we've had these applications in the past, and normally when property owners are in favor, adjacent properties are in favor, then PAC grants the 60 centimeter variance. However, I think the actual decision that gets put forward is that the post holes are just inside the property line, so you're not actually drilling the holes on the property line. Basically, they're touching the property line, if you will. So, and then most of the maintenance, if it's chain link fence, you can actually do from your own side. So even though we say it's on the property line, it's just inside. So it's easier just to grant the full 60 centimeters than 9.
any further questions for the applicant from members of PAC? Brenda?
Mine was just a quick question. Did you say all of the property people around that have signed a letter that they don't have a problem? I know you had some feedback from the resident at number 24. Have they signed off on the permission that they don't have a problem with that fence? You know?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's correct. We've received one concern, but the addition, this is what I would like to add as an addendum to the conditions, would be that we ask the applicants to canvass the abutting neighbors. So those that are in agreement will sign off before we release a building permit.
What happens if you can't get that one?
They would have to build within the 60 centimeter setback. So if one neighbor decided that they didn't want it on that common lot line, that would have to go with, we would not be allowed them, we would not be able to give them permission to place the fence on the property line. It would have to go in the 60 centimeters. However, the two at the back decide, yeah, we don't mind. They can sign off and the fence could go as close to that lot line.
Good luck. I understand what you're saying. I also noted that the property in question beside you has a lot of like hardwood and stuff. It's almost like a wood, stove wood business going on. Put your fence over the 2 feet. It just gives other people 2 more feet of property to put stuff on. That's what I have a problem with. So I support the addition of the fence right around the property line, not having had to have a setback. It's you know, creates problems, shall I say. And that was only one, we had only one concern. Anyway, that's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. Any other further questions for the applicant from PAC members? Is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone online willing to speak for or against this item? None being. For the applicant, do you understand what the Jennifer Jarvis was saying about getting the neighbors to agree, or where's your,
Yes. So
what's your,
well, let me repeat it just to make sure I understand. You'd like us to go see the 2 or 3 other people to give them the chance to say yes or no in writing, just to cover our butts, so to speak.
But I'm sure that if we go see the neighbor that doesn't want.
No, we already know that one. It's the others we have to ask,
Oh, okay. 'Cause-
to give them the equal chance.
Oh, okay, okay.
okay?
Is that it? That's what you were meaning? Yes, okay.
Kendall?
Mr., can I ask one question? The property line between Civic number 24 and yourself, on that property line, there's several trees? On, there was, okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please?
Motion forward if you like.
Go ahead, Kendall.
Recommend the Planning Advisory Committee approve the variance of 0.6 meters from the zoning bylaw 038, section 6, S7 for the setback of the property lines along the properties of Civic 24 and 16 Meteor Drive and 35 and 31 Galaxy Drive for a chain link fence to be erected along the common property lines at 20 Meteor Drive, PID 30219398. It should be subject to the following 4 conditions. Number 1, all property lines are clearly delineated prior to installation of the fence. My understanding is that's done. All work is to take place on the applicant's property. Number 3, a fence permit is obtained prior to any construction. And number 4, the applicant canvasses the 4 property owners on the adjacent property lines. 3, sorry.
All but 20, is that? Okay. Can I have a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
On the question? Brent?
My question is on the last part of the motion. Does it have to be 100% compliant, or does it have to be majority? That's the question I'm asking.
Dwight, do you want to, hang on, I'll get you on here, Dwight.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so notice has been sent, public notice was sent under the standard public notice policy or procedure of PAC policy. We don't have any, we didn't receive any feedback from, I believe it was 16 and 31 and 35. So in order to close the loop, to make sure that they receive the information and they're aware of it, and then we have a record that we keep on file against the application, we're asking that the property owner go to these adjacent properties and say, are you aware of the property line, of the fence going on the property line? Yes or no? That comes back to us before we release a permit. We have already heard from 24 who's not in favor of the fence being right on the property line. So it's to close the loop to make sure that they did get the public notice and that they had an opportunity to say yes or no. So if they come back, if the property owner says, no, I'm not in favor of it, then that's a discussion that we'll have to have with the applicant to see
Move
if
it
we
back in.
go forward.
Hang Hang on, Brent. Hang on, Brent. Go ahead, Brent.
The way I interpret the last line in the motion is that they had to have compliance with all adjacent property owners to get the setback. I just want I guess I'm looking for clarification, that's all.
So
Go
through
ahead.
you, Mr. Chair, if they go to the adjacent property owner 16 and 16 says yes, okay, you know you can go to the property line of 16. If they go to 31 and 31 says no, then okay, you know you can't put the fence on there directly on the property line. So you either come back to the town and say, here's the situation, or if they say yes, then you can put on the property line. 35 is the same. But we just need to close that loop. We didn't hear anything back.
Mr. Bishop?
I guess I don't feel that it's up to the homeowner to go to their neighbors and ask them these questions. I feel it's either the town has already put it out, they've been notified, that's it. We shouldn't be asking people to go to their neighbors, and whether they're friends, sometimes they are all friends, sometimes they're not, and confront them on these issues. So I'm against number 4 I second the motion, but I'm against number 4 as a condition. So I will not second it if 4 is not stricken from the motion.
What happens then, Dwight, for the, if we don't do 4?
Through you, Mr. Chair, how do you just how do you just confirm that they received it and they're not, and you're actually making a decision to put something on a property line of adjacent property. So how do we confirm that they received it? The world has opened up and maybe they're all away. They come back and there's a fence on the property line. So if they're aware of it, if they receive the notice and the property owner goes and says, are you in favor of it, and they sign it, then sort of close the loop. But again, it's PAC's decision. If PAC has the authority to set reasonable terms and conditions, PAC feels it's not reasonable and they just grant you the variance as presented, then that's the decision of PAC under their authority, and staff follows according to the decisions of PAC.
Brent?
So my question is, we've never done this in the past with any other fence situation. We've had people say yes or for, or no, they're not against it. The other thing is, we've done our due diligence. You know, everything was mailed out, so now why all of a sudden on this application are we saying we need to go to homeowners and get their consensus before the person wanting to put the fence up?
Understanding that in most cases, we've actually had some sort of communication between adjacent property owners. Again, I'll go back to my previous statement. If PAC feels that that's not a reasonable condition, we don't need to do it, then you strike it from your motion and we carry on.
Mr. Goslin?
Mr. Chairman, through you here, as a solution perhaps to this dilemma, what would happen if we suggest a variance of 0.4 meters instead of 0.6? That means that the property their fence will be directly inside, not on the property line, but inside their property. And I don't think that 2 centimeters, what is this, 0.2 meters at 5 centimeters, whatever the number is, will make a big difference to them, but it would solve the problem of the neighbor, because the neighbor concern that I read was he didn't want to be liable for damaging the fence when cutting the grass or do whatever he needs to do around the property. So if that fence is within 5 centimeters of the property line, then it should not be an issue. I don't know, maybe that's food for thoughts to solve the dilemma perhaps.
Dwight? Oops.
So
Oh,
Maybe we could alter it so that if the applicant goes to the neighbors and everyone's in favor, it can be placed on the property line. If none of them are in favor, then it's a variance of 0.4 as opposed to 0.6. And that way it's all on the property. So it's kind of either or. Where the neighbors agree, it's right on the property line. Where the neighbors don't agree, it's slightly off the property line on the applicant's property.
huh?
Go ahead.
If we do that, the 5 centimeters, who goes to cut the grass there? Because I won't have enough room to.
Dwight?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so Mr. Bishop had suggested that perhaps it's the town's responsibility to contact the property owners to confirm that they received it in their position on it. So it appears there's a couple of options that have been presented on the question. So one is either the motion stands as presented. It can be amended to say that it's staff's responsibility to contact property owners to confirm that they received the correspondence and they don't have any concerns with it. Or I think the third option was going to a 0.4 variance. So again, through you, Mr. Chair, to the PAC, if the motion needs to be varied, then you can either vary the motion or rescind the motion and present another one based on the decision the PAC feels.
Thank you. Mr. Bishop?
The notice has been sent to the homeowners on those streets. The town staff's taxed enough with the times that they have to spend on other things, let alone going and calling or following up on people whether they got it or not. It was sent out, as long as the address was correct, it's been sent out, they've been notified. That's it. I'm sorry, but we shouldn't have to keep following up on it, you know, and I guess we shouldn't be spending the town's money doing that sort of thing. We've already done it once. And then the last thing we want to do is send out, you know, registered letters to everybody whenever we have all these, you know, people we have to notify. And that's the only other way to get it back is if it was registered, so they did find it, which I'm not suggesting that. But the town's done their due diligence in my mind. The people have been notified. I say strike number 4, or I'm pulling my second.
Kendall?
I'm comfortable in removing number 4. I guess I do share the same concern. Staff would, in any municipality, has a large burden of work, and to contact one individual many times to ensure they're okay or not okay, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with that going forward. That would be a big precedent setting for a town.
Thank you, Kendall. So the updated motion is for the 3 items, and the motion that got seconded, amended, was to remove the 4th item for contacting the neighbors and getting confirmation. So with that being said, any further questions from PAC before we vote? Okay, we'll open the floor for voting, please. Darren, you? Okay.
Yeah, it seems to be a little slow tonight, sorry to that.
All right. Motion carried by a motion of 5-0. So congratulations. You have a letter in the mail in next 5 to 7 business days. Please work with the town to ensure all your permitting and everything's in place, and work with your neighbors. Thank you very much. Thank you. We're going to move on to item 7B, approval to add rock to stabilize a riverbank abutting 277 Model Farm Road. Could you please come up and state your name for the record, please? And in the meantime, while you state your name, we'll get, state your name, please? David Smith. David. Jennifer, you want to introduce that topic, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, 277 Model Farm Road has a 28-meter section of waterfront of their waterfront property is eroding or has some erosion issues, and so they have applied to us under our bylaw that's 6BB and 6I that states that Planning Advisory Committee is required. They need to approve any construction or development that occurs on a waterfront property, so that's why it's here before you. The applicant has already submitted an application for a Wawa permit through the Department of Environment, and staff have no issues with or concerns with the application.
Thank you, Jennifer. You would have received the same package we did in the mail. We did have an amended document there today. Is that from yourself, from the province, or?
That was after speaking with the province. They
Okay.
had said they're okay with it as long as we change. You can see our original was 3.08 meters away from our structure. And they said we need that back to 0.8 meters away from our structure.
Okay. So you would have received the same package we did. Is there anything else you'd like to add prior to members of the PAC or the public asking you a few questions?
No.
No? Okay. Any member of PAC have any questions for the applicant? None being, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions? Mr. Goslin.
I'll put a motion forward to approve the addition of rock along the riverbank abutting 277 Model Farm Road, PID number 30340988 FD. The following term and condition must be considered. A watercourse and wetland alteration (WAWA) permit is obtained from the Department of Environment and Local Government prior to the commencement of the proposed work.
Have a seconder on that? Have a seconder on that, Brent?
I'll second that.
On the question? Please vote. Are you in? Yes, for Darren. Motion carried by a vote of 5-0. Congratulations, and 5 to 7 business days, you have your letter in the mail. Best of luck. You're welcome. Okay, we'll move on to item 7C. Variance is requested for a freestanding sign exceeding permitted height and a second fascia sign to be located at 15 Pettingill Road, PID 302-56226. Could the applicant please come up to the podium and state your name for the record, please? Online?
Stefan?
Oh, Stefan, you're online. Okay, great. We'll get, Jennifer's going to introduce the topic here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is a request for a few variances for the signs. We are requesting permission to allow a second fascia sign at 15 Pettingill. We are requesting area variance to that sign of 0.2 square meters. We're also looking at a variance for a freestanding sign of 2.8 meters, where the the standard size is 6 meters. I'm having trouble tonight. And they also would require a variance to the sign area of 0.8 square meters for the freestanding sign as well. Concerns that staff have are that we feel that the sign height, the freestanding sign height is, it's quite a big difference from 6 meters, and it would be the largest sign in the Pettingill area. I know that we have approved other signs in Quispamsis, mostly in the Millennium Drive area, so this would be sort of a precedent-setting sign height for the Pettingill area. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. for the applicant, you would have received the same package we did in the mail. Is there anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to members of PAC or the public asking you some questions?
So all I would really like to say is that the reason we have the freestanding sign so large is we view a nice corridor on that ground level. There's lots of sight lines to the north and the south of the street. And so we feel it's very valuable for the tenants to be able to be seen from far distance. At the same time, we took a 6-meter step back from our property line, and that makes it so none of our neighbors, existing or future, will be bothered by, or their sight lines be bothered. Again, if you see that the front of the mall here has all the fascia signs as well, we wanted to add the additional one on the side so that both sight lines from both transportation going in either direction can see. And yeah, we just really want to be able to hold the best kind of tenants long term, provide value to the community, and see that area grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? Brenda?
Just a quick one at first. How tall is that building? What is the height of the building?
The height of the building is approximately 16 feet.
15 feet?
16.
16.
Okay. And the height of the sign would be 29 feet, so it would tower above that facility. To me, that's not going to, I didn't see too many buildings that had the signs that towered above them on the Pettingill Road. So it's basically the twice of the height of the building. It's kind of overpowering for that area. Anyway, but that's my question for this time.
Thank you, Brenda. Any further questions for the applicant? Brent?
My question is, most of the businesses that are going there are professional medical-based businesses, appointment driven. So my question is really, what's the impact of having a 30-foot sign out in front of the building when most of the people that are going to an oral surgeon or to orthodontist are already aware of where the destination is? It's more of I guess it's more of a reminder where the building is, but is that sign actually going to drive new customers in for them with a sign that big?
So I could answer that if you'd like.
Proceed. Yep.
Yeah, there's actually future 10 possible tenants in that building. Currently there's 5, but there's the addition of an additional 5 when the building expands. So this pylon sign, freestanding sign, will basically take into account future tenants as well as current tenants when the building does expand in the future.
So you're saying that the sign, according to the diagram you provided, I think it only has space for 6 tenants, doesn't it? Am I looking at that correctly? Okay. 9? Okay. No, I got it. Okay, perfect. I'm corrected. Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant from PAC? Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time. Is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion forward for or against with terms and conditions, please? Not hearing anything. Any further questions from PAC with respect to Dwight or Jennifer? Oh, Brent, go ahead, Brent. Or Kendall, sorry.
Could staff give me an example of where a similar sign to this is located in the area? It seems big, like I was thinking about up by the Irving and the SL.
I guess it would have a sign that big, would it not?
Is that what we're looking at, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I believe that sign is quite a bit bigger than the sign that we're dealing with here, the Irving sign. Oh.
Stefan, do you have the actual height of the sign?
Yes, we do. 290 inches.
Good.
What it says on your plan, is that correct?
It's 300 and...
It would be, for just the sign
348.
face alone is 280 inches.
Yeah, it's 346 from the ground to the very top, though.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And I'd like to correct, the building height is actually 16 feet from top of roof to the ground, but there's an additional 3-foot parapet on top. So the overall height of the building is approximately 19 feet from the ground to the top of the parapet, if that makes any difference in perspective.
So do we have any other signs in Quispam that are 30 feet high? I'm just trying to visualize it.
Yeah, I'm getting you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, off the top of my head, I can't, but I would probably fashion probably the Home Hardware sign on Millennium Drive. You have the McCassel sign at the corner there. That might be pushing it to that height as well. Anywhere where they would be highway commercial side of things. You would have the higher sign because you have the visibility of the Mackay Highway. You have just the long stretches of Millennium Drive, which is more of a service road. Then you would look at what the Pettingill Road is in this particular down sort of core area. Probably the highest one that we have would be the plaza sign, where we have the shoppers and the Good Life and along there. But I don't think that would be into the 30-foot range off the top of my head.
Go ahead,
I
Dwight.
think the
sorry.
request is 2.8 meter difference, so it's almost a 50%. I mean, 6 meters is your standard, and they're almost going half of that again, is the request. And through you, Mr. Chair, just so there's actually, I think, 3 variances, so each one can be treated in like in terms of you
Individually?
have the different fascia sign, you have the area of the fascia sign plus,
Okay.
so you can look at each one.
So we can approve 2, 1, or 3.
Yeah, that's what I'm,
Yeah, okay.
just from terms of guidance to PAC.
Yep. Thank you. Any further questions? For the second time, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions on the 3 variances? Is there any additional information that PAC members require to make their decision? Anyone from PAC would put a motion for or against with terms and conditions?
Staff doesn't have any concerns with the fascia signs?
Jennifer?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. Staff's concern was with the height of the sign.
Kendall? Any?
I guess my question is, could we table the freestanding sign for the applicant to take a second look at being more appropriate for the area and put forward the fascia sign?
And the other variants. I believe we can do that, or we could just not approve the variance for the sign, let the applicant come back and move on to approving the other two variances. Go ahead, Dwight. Is that okay with what I was referring to?
Mr. Chair, so yes, there's requests for multiple variances, so if PAC, when they make a decision, whether the decision will be, if they're asking that additional consideration be given to the freestanding sign, if they decide to not grant the variance for the freestanding sign, but ask that additional consideration be given, they have to give a reason as to the reason why in terms of not approving that particular variance. Just so the applicant is clear.
Yeah. Any member of PAC want to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions for the three variances? Mark?
Mr. Chairman, I'll put a motion forward to grant variance as 15 Pettingill Road, PID number 30256226, to the following section of sign bylaw 036, section 13A1, to permit one additional fascia sign, a 0.2 square meter variance to section 13A1A for a total permitted area of 4.7 for all fascia sign found at Unit A. A table, the pollen sign or the road sign, they let the developer to perhaps come up with other version of potential sign that could be installed and limit the height of the pollen sign, to reduce the height of the pollen sign.
Okay.
So a sign permit is issued prior to the signs being erected, as on the building. The approval is for the supply drawing and specification only, and any variation shall be required for PAC approval. So my point is, I'm okay with all the other two variants. It's just the road sign, the pollen sign. I think we should give a chance to the developer to come up with various options, perhaps, to we find all the PAC member find the height of the sign is perhaps too high.
Doesn't fit within the area, is that what you're?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure. What are you, any issue with that table of the pollen sign?
To you, Mr. Chair, as I always refer, PAC has the authority to make reasonable terms and conditions and as part of their motion, and then staff would follow up accordingly. As long as they're clear in terms of the reason why they're tabling it or if they're denying it.
Thank you, Dwight. Is there a seconder on Mark's motion? Kendall? I'll second that. On the question? Can we please vote, please, on the current item? Oh, sorry, Brent. Go ahead, Brent. Sorry.
Hit the wrong button. With regards to the question and the motion, is it possible to add the part with the freestanding sign that the developer went back a rendering, showing the sign in scale to the actual building instead of just showing us the sign? Another question is, there is residential property in behind that development. If that variance gets passed with a 30-foot sign, what's the light pollution going to be into that vicinity of residential property?
Okay, so you're asking that the client to show a rendering of that sign beside the building?
Yes, that's
And
correct.
then
And
also about light pollution from the sign?
right, because I was saying, if we put a 30-foot sign there, you have all these houses on the Jasper that comes down there, whatever street it is anyways.
Okay, Mark, how does you feel about that, Mark?
I'm fine with this request. My concern was, when is there a limit on the height of a sign? Because if we approve at 28 feet now, the next one's gonna come back 31 and 32, and there's gonna be a limit, and I think a variance, it's always given. We always like to work with developer and support the development, and everything comes along with it, but sometimes it's excessive requests, and a 2.8 meter, in my opinion, a 2.8 meters variance for the pylon sign, it's a bit excessive, so.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Could we please vote, please? Okay, motion's carried by a vote of 4-1, four yeas and one nay. Motion's carried. Stefan, you would have heard the motion about we approved the fascia sign, but we'd like for you to reconsider the freestanding sign and do a rendering it compared to the building and light pollution, and potentially come back with a different design that kind of fits in with the area.
I did hear that, yes.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, in 5 to 7 business days, you'll have your letter in the mail. So please work with the town and come back, and best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 7D, an application for a takeout restaurant at Unit 111, 175 Hampton Road. Could the applicant please be unmuted or come up to the podium, please?
Hello, my name is Pete Richard.
Keith or Peter? Pete? Pete.
Pete.
Pete, okay, you're going to get Jennifer to introduce the topic, and then we'll ask you a few questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for a takeout restaurant, a Domino's Pizza, to be located at 175 Hampton Road. It is a discretionary use, and as such, it does require to have PAC's approval. I did note in my staff report that the Quispam Town Center Mall was owned and operated by Raucan. That is an error, and I'd like to make that known that it is now Plaza REIT, and just wanted to make note of that error in the report. Staff have no concerns with this, and that's what I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Peter, you would have received the same package we did in the mail. Is there anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to members of PAC or the public asking you a few questions?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? None being, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Brent, you're up.
I'll make the motion that the Planning Advisory Committee approve Domino's Restaurant Takeout Restaurant as a discretionary use at Unit 111, 175 Hampton Road, PID 00243204, subject to the following terms and conditions. 1, hours of operations are not to exceed 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. Sunday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. Weekends, days, sorry. Yeah, 10 to 1, weekend days, closing is proposed for 2 a.m. And the applicant enters into development agreement with the town of Quispamsis, and 3, a building permit is obtained from the town of Quispamsis prior to construction.
Can I have a seconder on that? Brenda?
I would second that.
Okay. On the question? None being, please vote. By a vote of 5-0, motion is carried. Congratulations, Peter. You'll have a letter in the mail in the next 5 to 7 business days with your approval, so please work with the town to get all necessary paperwork approved and signed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Item 7E, a transportation company with storage bay, recreational vehicle sales, showroom, recreational vehicle service area, offices, and storage units. It's similar and compatible use at 48 Enterprise Drive. Could you please state your name for the record, please? Russell, we're gonna get Jennifer to introduce the topic, then we may have some questions for you.
The applicant, thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is proposing to establish a business in the light industrial zone. The lot does contain 11,716 square meters. The activities that are proposed to take place are conducive with a light industrial area, although none are individually listed as permitted uses. So we are looking for a planning advisory committee to approve this as a similar or compatible use. And one letter of concern was received, but it was more a letter from Rainbow, the residential neighborhood that's sort of above. Their concern was that the water was leaving their Rainbow court area and draining down into the 48 Enterprise area. So we did note that on a site plan from the survey that there is a drainage swale between lot 60 and lot 48, as you can see on the screen there. And there's also a 15-meter buffer zone that I would like to add to the conditions to go across the back of the property as per Section 6J of the zoning bylaw. And that 15-meter buffer is from the property line and needs to be on the property of 48 Enterprise to provide a buffer between a residential zone and a light industrial zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. You would have received the same package we did in the mail. Is there anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to members of PAC or the public asking you a few questions?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? Brenda?
Just a quick one. You're going to be selling recreational vehicles? What type of vehicles are they going to be?
So that'd be part of the building itself.
Okay,
We have a customer or renter that wants to start a ATV, Sea-Doo, snowmobile,
okay.
we have a showroom and
But if it's like an ATV and things, not, well, snowmobiles, I guess. If people want to drive them and test them before they buy them, would that be right on your property? They would not try to leave the property to test drive things?
if there is any test driving, which would be limited, yes, it'd be on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for the applicant? Darren?
How many storage units are you gonna put up? Are they like the storage units that we're seeing pop up throughout the
Yes.
valley, that style?
So I haven't finalized that, Mr. Bishop, because I guess meeting with Ms. Jarvis today, I found out that there's actually that 15-meter buffer plus the obviously the easement, so I don't know exactly how many I can fit to meet the town's requirements at this time. But it would be all within coming back to PAC to get approval.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Mark?
Mr. Chairman, I'll put a motion forward to grant approval for similar or compatible use for the operation of a transportation company with storage bay, recreational vehicle sales showroom, recreational vehicle service area, offices, and storage unit at 48 Enterprise Drive, PID number 30236749. It should be subject to the following condition. Number one, a subdivision application be received by the town and approved prior to the development of the lot. Number two, a 6-meter public utility easement be executed along the most northerly, is this the one you're referring to, the 15 meters? Okay. Prior to the yard lot in line represented on the approval subdivision plan. A stormwater management plan be submitted to and approved by the town of Quispamsis, ensuring that stormwater does not impact neighboring properties. A tree buffer zone in accordance with section 6J of zoning bylaw 038 is established along the lot line abutting the residential zone. Number 5, hours of operation will not exceed 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday to Sunday. Number 6, the applicant enter into a development agreement with the town of Quispamsis. Number 7, any signage must comply with the town signs bylaw. And number 8, a building permit is issued prior to construction. And number 9, a 15 buffer zone.
That's item 4, Mark.
Number 4, it's at the side, okay.
Just say, you gotta say
Okay.
15-meter tree buffer.
Okay, a tree buffer at number 4, make it 15 meters.
Have a seconder on that?
Can I ask one question?
Not in the middle of motion, really. Okay, go ahead then. Yeah. Yeah, we got a second on the motion first.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Just on the hours.
Sunday night.
The motion is for Monday to Sunday.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Dwight? You okay?
Are we on the question?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Comment.
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Clarification on two things. One, there was servicing in this potential facility. Just clarification on what that entails. And second, storage facilities. Just want to point out something that we should be aware of is this is really a sensitive area to some degree. A couple of reasons. One, we have well here. Next door, we have a business operation that's probably dependent on water and well. So it's making sure that whatever that services is, if it's oil changes in oil, that the actual slab is conducive to that. There's no penetration of oils into the soil as well as the storage facilities. The last thing we want is contamination of wells in that particular area. So that's just a point of clarification that I would like to see either through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant and for PAC to consider.
Can the applicant, you want to speak on that, about the oil, if there's oil?
Yeah. Most of the services are going to be provided would be cleaning of the units. Most units will be used, purchase used. So it'll be cleaning, changing tires, fixing plastics. Very little mechanical work will be done. Maybe, changing a brake line, something to that effect if it was broken. But it's not going to be a full service oil change, motor jobs type thing, no.
Okay. If there, I guess if there is, you will take that in consideration for your oil contamination.
Yes.
Excuse me. Violet, you had a question?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, can I double check on the hours of operation with respect to the noise bylaw? Does the noise bylaw stop at 9 p.m.? And our conditions state at 10? I just wanted to make sure. Could be wrong.
Dwight?
We would have to go back and verify what the reference is in the noise bylaw specifically. I know there's restrictions on construction equipment and those types of things, but actual business, we'd have to go back to actually read the verbiage of the bylaw to come see what that entails.
So we can leave that as it is, and if there's an adjustment, we'll get notified on that? Is that correct, Violet? Okay. Nope, Mr. Bishop's in queue there?
I have a question through to Dwight, through you, Mr. Chair. So in the construction of the building, will that not come to planning to be detailed? I mean, if it has motor vehicles in it and they are doing some sort of service, would that not be a requirement to have, that sort of oil catch or whatever type of system in the building anyways?
Through you,
Dwight?
Mr. Chair, to Mr. Bishop, that's a very valid point, and that is correct. That would actually come through building inspection and planning, site plans. And that would be something that we would put in the development agreement in terms of oil separators and sort of things of the bylaw. My intent was just to make PAC aware of it and to consider it as part of their review, so that in the event that came in the future, to make sure it was discussed and covered by PAC and taken into consideration.
Thank you, Dwight. Any further questions? Okay, can we vote in progress, please? Motion carried by a vote of 5-0. Congratulations. 5 to 7 business days, have your letter in the mail, and best of luck with your endeavors, and please work with the town to get everything signed and documented. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Go on to item 7F, Polystar Inc. subdivision tentative plan. Please state your name for the record.
Mark Hatfield.
Mark, we're going to have just Jennifer talk about it first there. So Jennifer, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before you is a subdivision application, a tentative plan for your approval. The reason it's before you is that there is the proposed lot would result in a lot not abutting a public street, and that does require PAC approval. It's also requesting a 4-meter lot width variance to parcel 501B and a 4.15 meter lot width variance to lot 501A. We have received 4 concerns from neighboring properties. They've been detailed. You've received those in your package. Staff have no concerns with the application. There is sufficient land area for the development of semi-detached buildings. The lot width variance, although the lot width isn't there, the overall area of the lot, it far exceeds what is required for this type of development. And like I said, staff have no concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Mr. Hatfield, you would receive the same package we did in the mail. We did get an amendment for 7F showing that, and we also had, I don't know if you got to see that package from Debbie Stewart for 7F with a concern she had. If you had, I don't know if you saw that. You can have my copy there. It's some pictures and some of her concerns. She's at 415. Maybe we'll give you a minute to look at that, and we'll see if the town or PAC members have questions for you. Is that okay, Mark? Yep. Any members of PAC have any questions for Mr. Hatfield? Mr. Bishop?
I have a question, Mr. Hatfield, do you own the property at 425 Hampton Road? Okay.
Thank you. Brenda?
Was that a empty lot, or what is subdivided between that one and 425? Was that split, or was that there? You didn't have to get that piece of property separated from another piece of property?
Road probably about 10 years ago, I think, maybe 12 years ago,
Okay,
and had it since.
okay, thanks.
Any further questions from PAC members? Mark, maybe, Mr. Bishop?
I guess I just have a comment, I guess. There's two sets of duplexes going there, so there's gonna be 4 homes in there. And the street is gonna be, what do we envision the street being coming out onto a busy highway,
So it'd be a private driveway,
private lane? And who's gonna take care of that plowing, cleaning?
because these are all owned by myself. These are not for sale by individual people.
We rent it, is that what you're saying?
Correct. One's for my father, one's for my colleague, and another colleague at work. More of a senior complex, I guess.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any further questions? No, Darren, you good? Okay. Mark, maybe anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Could you please come up one at a time, state your name for the record, please? Yep, please state your name for the record.
Rudy and Carol Hogenberg,
Okay.
6 Hampton Road.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead. We'll give
One
you
of
10
our-
minutes. We have, yep.
One of our main concerns is to, first of all, how many wells are going in there?
Okay.
And I would be concerned too that the property right next door, 425, could be subject to this. According to the letter, it's a 7-meter variance, which is a significant variance in width. That's almost a 20% decrease. The letter stated it was supposed to be 38 meter, going to 31 meter.
Okay.
So that puts the property next to 425 in the future in the same category too. Be opened up, and then will there be more additional wells going in? And that's it's quite a strain on the water system in such a small area.
Okay. Perfect. Do you have any? No? Okay. Good. Okay, we'll ask you to, that was all you had for questions or concerns?
Well, and the only other concern I had too was in sense for, the letter was put out the 23rd. Now, these days in the mail, it takes a few days. We got ours on the 29th, and we only had till the 5th, like for objections. There's some of our neighbors that are aware, so they've gotten letters, and they're probably not even aware of it. So, plus, the letter only showed a property outline. It didn't even actually show what was actually being planned to be put in there. So, we had to find that out ourselves. The letter stated it was a plan. To me, that was not a plan. It's just a property outline, and it kind of surprised me that the people in the surrounding area wouldn't have at least given an idea of what you're even proposing, let alone just the variance.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Want to come up and please state your name for the record, please?
Hi, I'm Debbie Stewart, and my home is at 415 Hampton Road. It abuts the property. I am wholeheartedly opposed to the granting of this variance. I want to express to you folks that since receiving the letter from the town, I attended the town office, and like Mr. Hogenberg said, I received a letter with 2 blue blocks. I didn't know what was going in there. I did come to the town office, and the girls were very helpful. They showed me what was going in there. So that was fine. I since I received that letter, I've been extremely upset. I recently retired and became a widow, and this has added stress to my life. I've lived in that property for 40 years. It is my home. I take pride in that property. And from what I understand from the plan, the roadway, that yellow mark is abutting my property. That is all trees. It's beautiful. I showed you pictures of my backyard. I can't even go out in my back deck and look at it anymore. All I can see is a roadway. They say a driveway. It's going to be a roadway. There's going to be 8 cars in there. There's two families in each building. My husband's parents bought that lot in 1960. They built the house in 61. My husband grew up there. After his parents died, we moved there. Hopefully someday my son, when I die, will have that property. But if he wants to sell it, where's the saleability? It's going to decrease my property value immensely. Another thing is the well. I have a well that could be potentially 16 extra people on that water table. Hampton Road, one of the busiest roads in the valley. More vehicles, more vehicles. With 2 homes like that, there's going to be increased noise. I'm going to sit and look at my roadway in the backyard, and I'm going to look at 2 side-by-side developments, not trees, not wildlife. That's what I'm going to look at. The curb appeal and uniqueness of my property will no longer exist if this construction is allowed to proceed. In conclusion, I would like to say that I hope you will take consideration to what I've said. I'm extremely upset, and I just don't know how to express that any further. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Third and final time, is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? None being, Mark, could you go back up to the podium? Mark, you know how many wells and that you're planning on be there?
Yes, 1 well.
One well to serve all properties?
Correct.
Okay. And is there any reason why the plan was not included in the initial packet? Or is that?
We didn't have it ready at that point, and
Okay.
without having PAC's approval, it's basically putting the cart before the horse. So we did have that drawing done up, just a quick prelim of what it's going to look like.
Okay.
Of the home itself.
Okay. Any questions, further questions from members of PAC to the applicant? Or address any of the any issues that the concerns were? Any questions around that? Go ahead, Darren.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Dwight or to staff, I guess, the 1 well for 2 duplexes, I guess, is that, is that normally done for that type of complex?
Dwight?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we have in the municipality, we have developments that have 3 units per building on a single well. We have buildings that have 6 units on a single well. So when you look at Merritt Hill, each of those buildings are on a separate well. And then obviously once you get into a certain number of units on a single well, then Clean Water Act and other regulations provincially kick in terms of having to do testing and approvals to operate. Those things are based on the number of units, and I believe the maximum is once you go above 6. So anything below that, then it's that element is sort of taken out of it. So, but are other buildings in the municipality that operate on a single well. In this particular case, they're rentals, so they're not distinct ownership. So we don't get into who owns the well and that type of thing, which actually would limit what happens to this property in the future in terms of it being subdivided and distinct ownership. You're getting into smaller lots. Have to get into the common walls between the units being the property lines. And again, so there's other layer of things that would come into play if it ever came back to the town to say, I wanted to sell each unit. That would take a whole different perspective on how we would look at it from a planning perspective. Definitely if you only have one well.
Dwight, where's the water stop? At KV High School?
The water system is just above, it's at Milliken Drive. And then the KV is serviced off of that water line that runs down Milliken Drive
Okay.
through an easement or through I believe through an easement into the KV High School. But the actual the actual end of the line is at Milliken.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, to you, Mark. The lane there that's going to be adjacent to property 415, do you have any plan to put any shrubs or trees or something like that so Mrs. Stewart can keep her privacy on her property?
Yes, obviously the yellow from what it shows is very close to the property line. I do believe there is a setback there which would be in place. Both properties will be fully landscaped and trees and so forth will be planted throughout the properties and garden beds to make them both look very curb appealing. These are senior rentals.
Yep.
These are for, like I said, my mother and
I'm
father.
just trying to address Mrs.
Yep,
Stewart's
100%.
concern here that her privacy and so it was some kind of a row of trees or shrubs or something like that
Yep.
is food for thought. I'm not sure if that's planned because I don't see it from the plan here, but it would be great to have.
Right?
So my question is, what's the implications if we flip the property and move the access lane to the east of that property?
Yep.
So we move it away from 415. I mean,
Oh, the driveway you mean?
yeah, so butt it up to 425 as opposed to 415.
Yeah. The reason why we looked at that was just of water flow and the natural grade of the land. It goes from left to right from 415 to 425. So for the purpose of that was the reason being.
And you probably have two driveways too close to each other too up there.
The other thing too, I guess, would be is this way here, people they're not looking directly at each other. When 415 would be sitting on their deck, the residents in 419 would be looking at each other. This way here, there's an opportunity to have a green space in between.
Any further questions for the applicant? Kendall, do you have a question there? I saw it flash. No?
In the driveway as well.
Okay. Mr. Bishop?
Thanks. Mr. Hackett, do you have any inkling in the future that you will purchase 425?
I've actually contacted the new owner. He has no interest in selling it. It was recently changed hands within the last year and a half, and I've actually already approached him. And
All right, with that, is there any member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions? Any member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Kendall?
I'll put a motion forward. I recommend the Planning Advisory Committee approve of the Property Star Inc. subdivision with the following items. Number one, approval of the private right-of-way to lot 501-A as the lot will not front a municipal street. Number two, in the interest of compliance with the subdivision and zoning bylaws, granting of a lot width variance of 4 meters to lot 501-B and a lot width variance of 4.15 meters to lot 501-A. Number 3, the requirement of the property owner to enter into a hold harmless agreement with the town prior to the subdivision plan approval and prior to issuing of a building permit regarding construction, maintenance, and upkeep of the private access to a lot that does not front a municipal street and highlights the concern for fire, police, and ambulance and the importance of unobstructed access. Number 4, the civic addressing for lot 501A must be posted and visible from Hampton Road as per the numbering of the buildings bylaw. Number 5, a stormwater management plan be submitted to and approved by the town of Quispamsis prior to issuance of a building permit. Number 6, an on-site septic approval is required by the Provincial Health Act. Number 7, LPP obligations are met through cash in lieu in the amount of $750. Number 8, filing fees in the amount of $100 for the subdivision plan of 2 lots or less. Number 9, the final plan is to be signed by the property owners and any applicable public utilities. Number 10, the development of a subdivision and the private access must be completed as per all applicable town bylaws and policies. And I was going to put number 11, that planting of shrubs and trees along the private access to provide a small buffer between the homeowner, the adjacent homeowner. And I guess that's to be approved by town staff. Yes.
Between the road and 415. Have a seconder on that? Oops, Dwight, got a question there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the second must happen before we get on the question.
Brent?
Can I have, Mr. Chairman?
Dwight, on the question?
The recommendation regarding on-site septic approval is not applicable in this particular case because it would be connected to municipal sewer. That should be struck from your recommendation.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
There's a recommendation about his on-site septic approval. This is connected to municipal sewer, so it's not applicable in this particular case, so it should be struck.
Thanks, Dwight. Oops, sorry, go ahead.
One of the comments that came back, just so that we're clear in terms of the lot width variance that's being granted, it's 31 meters of width, 38 meters of depth. So in this particular case, the lot width is actually, the minimum lot width is 35 and there's 31, which there is, the request is for a 4-meter variance.
Yeah.
The reference to it being 38 is the actual lot depth. That's from the Hampton Road back.
Clear the planting of some shrubs. The applicant did describe some plantings that could occur, and I guess I was comfortable what the gentleman was speaking about.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, so an item that PAC might want to consider is the submission of a landscaping plan that addresses the driveway and its impacts on the adjoining properties. That can be reviewed and approved by town staff.
You want to add that as another condition, Kendall?
That would be great, Mr. Chairman.
Landscaping plan be submitted to the town for approval?
That's part of number 10.
Yes, so number 11, actually. Oh, sorry.
Number 11.
Thanks.
Brent, you okay with that that amendment?
I am. I'd just like to add, prior to that amendment, that as part of that landscaping plan, we should, the developer should take a look what's already existing and minimize the impact of what has to be removed. I'd like that added to the, as part of that landscaping.
Kendall, you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Oh, Dwight, you're up.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to comment on Mr. Preston's recommendation. So I'll just refer PAC to the zoning bylaw section 60, I believe it is, with respect to clear cutting or cutting of trees. So in this particular case, that bylaw says that you can only cut what's reasonable for lawful construction. So that can be taken into consideration as part of the landscaping plan to mitigate impacts to adjoining properties.
Mark, you okay with that?
100%.
All right. Okay. Please include that buffer. Any further questions? None being, can we have a vote, please? He's a yay. Okay, by a vote of 5-0, motion's been carried. In 5 to 7 business days, you have a letter in the mail. Please try to work with the neighbors and make that land pleasing for them so they can have a good understanding there. And you'll have your stuff in the mail. Please work the town, get all I's dotted and T's crossed.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. Item 7G, Schooner Point Development, Kingsview Phase 19, tentative subdivision plan. Peter, yeah, we're gonna get Dwight to introduce the topic, so Dwight.
Thank you, Sue. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to PAC. So the plan that's before PAC is a revision to a plan that came to PAC, I believe it was in March, earlier this year. What this plan proposes is actual street connection to Squire Drive. One of the recommendations that came out of PAC's previous review was to consider an actual connection to Squire Drive, just given the length of Kingsway Drive and the limits on where future connections to the adjoining public streets would happen. That was generated because over the past number of reviews of this particular plan, the concerns of the residents have been the volume of traffic, concerns for just street safety and those types of things. But also looking at it from a planning perspective, the subdivision bylaw does require that when you get over 300 meters of the length of streets, then you have to start looking at where alternate access can get in for emergency services and those types of things. So what the developer has done is he's worked with his engineering consultants. He's come back and said, here's what we have, we are proposing that we feel can work with this particular area. So as I noted in my staff report, there's a couple of things that need to happen. One, there needs to be a variance because the proposed right-of-way width is 10 meters. So that 10 meters is curb to curb. So what the developer is proposing is that would include driving surface, curb, and then a storm sewer system within that right-of-way. So we're not getting into the ditches and those types of things where you get back slopes and you need that larger right-of-way. That's one of the rationales behind the reduced right-of-way width. So it's proposed at 10 meters. The minimum right-of-way width in the bylaw is 20 meters. So it's a 10 meter reduction. The minimum distance between intersections in the bylaw is a minimum of 60 meters. In this particular case, we're at about 50 is what I sort of scaled off, measured somewhere in that neighborhood. The location of this particular access is again limited by, obviously there's a residence that's already constructed there, and then you're getting into a bit of a crest of a hill and sort of line of sight. So it's located in that particular area, which does provide probably the best in terms of location with respect to the line of sight, the distance away from the Cornelius Drive right of way, as well as given the area and the topography, it does drop off quite steep. So this is probably the area where you're going to get the large, sort of that acceptable range of final street grade. As I noted in my staff report, at the time of writing the report, I didn't have the grade. The developer has since, Mr. Dunham has since submitted and said it's about 11%ish, somewhere in that particular neighborhood. So PAC has the right to grant up to 10%. Anything beyond that is a decision of council, right? So you guys can support the street grade, but because you're exceeding what the subdivision bylaw caps at 10%, then obviously it would be council's decision through the assent process of whether they would accept the street at 11%. And just for way of clarification, there are other streets within the municipality that are at 11% in that range. There are some other right-of-way, there are some other variances in terms of, so it would be support of a grade variance, the distance between right-of-ways, as well as there's some lot variances that are in there. So in my package, I did include a marked up version that sort of looked at what those lot widths would be. So they were, for all intent and purposes, approved on the previous review of the plan. There's some slight adjustments to some of the lots because of the introduction of the street connection. The only question, the only lot that I have some question about from a planning perspective is obviously the lot that abuts, I believe that's 61 maybe, Squire Drive. Thinking, yeah. The actual usability of that particular lot in terms of building a house on it, when you look at the easements, when you look at the setback, when you look at the rear portion of that property, it actually jumps off quite significantly. So you're looking at the front portion. But again, that's something that, in terms of a lot being created, it meets the area. Depending on how you define what is the front and what is the side, you know, it's more than 70 meters in length. So it's just a narrowing of the lot that would probably present a challenge of how a building would be situated. That's why in my report, I've said from a subdivision perspective and creating a lot, it meets the area, it meets that, I guess, width or depth, depending on how you want to determine the front. But in terms of locating a building on there, it's something that would have to be reviewed at a building permit stage. Probably variances would have to be granted, and whether it's doable or viable, something we'll have to look at in the future. If you look at it from the other side, if you were to say, okay, let's just leave it as a remnant parcel, it's still a lot. It's still there. So in this particular case, we're dimensioning it and giving an indication of what area and what's there to work with in the future. So yeah, it's coming back to PAC as PAC had recommended to the development officer and to the developer to consider where possibly a connection could happen. And this is what's come back. So at this stage, before the plan can move forward, from a development officer perspective, I would need support of PAC in terms of the overall connection, in terms of the variances with respect to the right-of-way and the distance between two street intersections, as well as support for the lot grade being in excess of 10%, which again, ultimately is a decision of council, and the lot width variances. The lot width variances are about in a range of 1.5 meters, but as you can see on the plan, they're significantly deep. So you have the area, and this area is obviously serviced by municipal sewer. So the functionality and the ability to build these lots is not compromised by the small reduction in the lot widths. This will also allow for better civic numbering in the area, and that was one of the previous concerns. So what I would envision is Kingsway Drive probably ending as it is right now, and Blenheim Court either becoming Blenheim Street or Blenheim whatever, and it actually going from Squire Drive all the way down. So that would actually make the civic numbering a little smoother in that particular area. There's a couple of errors on the plan. We have Kings Drive, which should be Kingsway Drive, but those are grammatical errors and nothing that would sort of withhold a tentative approval at this stage and can be corrected on the final plan. The other thing I've noted in my staff report is that the plan is missing the local government services easements that would need to be on the rear of lots 66 and 67 for sewer servicing. But again, local government services easements are not approved by the Planning Advisory Committee. They are approved by the development officer and reviewed by council. So
Thanks, Dwight. Mr. Donovan, do you have anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to questions from PAC?
Yeah, just a couple of minor things, and maybe not necessarily needs to be dealt with tonight, but the local government services easement. We believe that we could put that in the right of way on Squire Drive rather than having to go to the rear, but something our consultants are working on. I've also spent some time on the smaller lot that we're talking about. I have a narrower house. It's like 35 feet wide. So one of the things that I believe is in the staff report suggests that the driveways for those two houses beyond Blenheim, it would be preferable for me for that particular one if we could put that on Squire, because I think I have a house that would work there. I haven't reviewed it today or anything, but when I worked with Andrew on this tentative plan, I had that in mind.
Is that for 165?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any members of PAC have any questions for Mr. Donovan? Brenda?
A couple of quick ones. Have they done the site distance from where that street is supposed to come out to Squire and see the?
Yeah, so that was submitted to planning today for review, and it's my understanding that it passed.
Okay, and I know this is to take the pressure off of Kingsway or whatever, but I can't see too many cars trying to get up that street in the middle of winter, because not going to be the first one plowed for sure. It's very steep.
Yeah.
And I can see going down it very fast, maybe not under control, but it's steep. I find that a little disconcerting, but I know this is what the town is looking for. I'm not sure I'm totally happy with that, connection. To me, it looks dangerous, but I'm not the professional and engineer and stuff like that, so.
So it was my preference to not do this.
Do that.
I have to build an extra 60 meters of street at my own cost. I'm here because I was asked.
Yeah, I know we didn't like the original plan, and I'm not sure if I like the solution, this one. So I'm very torn, but I will listen to the advice from others around me. Thanks, that's all.
Thanks, Brenda. Any further questions from PAC members to the applicant? Mr. Bishop?
I guess, Mr. Donovan, with your last comment of not being happy with this scenario, do you have an alternative scenario? I know we asked you to come up with scenarios, and this one landed in front of me. I thought I was just about to commend you for working so well with the town and coming up with this, and then now I find out that you're not really happy with it. So
No, I think that to provide a connection to Squire, I think this is the best opportunity to do that. My not happiness with it is the fact that I had engineering completed and stuff before, and we went back to the drawing board. That's where the issue for me. I believe that it'll work. It's steep for sure, but I believe providing an alternate access, I think it's probably the best that we can do to try and meet all the parameters. I don't know that if we were to, I don't know that we could come up with a better solution necessarily is all.
Thank you. Any further questions for the applicant from PAC members? None being, is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions? Mr. Bishop.
I would like to commend Mr. Donovan for working with the town and coming up with a solution for the this traffic problem, I guess, with such a long street. And I would like to put a motion forward that PAC approve the Kings Valley subdivision phase 19 revised tentative plan, revised street layout, Squire Drive connection, PID 172-171, 302-46102, and 302-47670 for Schooner Point Development, Inc., subject to the following conditions. One, granting lot with variances for the following lots: lot 161, 2 meters; 163, 2 meters; 166, 1.5 meters; 167, 1.5 meters; 169, 3 meters; 170, 3 meters; 171, 3 meters; 172, 3 meters; 173, 3 meters. A lot with variance for lot 166, 167 in the amount of 5 square meters and 8 square meters. Lot depth variance for lot 164 with further review required as a building stage prior to the issuing of the building permit. 3, street right-of-way with variance in the amount of 10 meters from Blenheim Court as it connects to Squire Drive. 4, street right-of-way intersection separation variances approximately 10 meters for the intersection distance between Cornelius Drive and Blenheim. 5, street grade to 10%, the maximum that can be granted by PAC, subject to the installation of storm sewage system. 6, I guess, and 5, a suggestion that town council approve that to the 11, I guess, percent grade, would make that recommendation to town council. 6, subdivision, submission of a line of sight stoppage distance analysis for the intersection of Blenheim with Squire Drive, driveway access for lots 166, 167. Number 7, driveway access to lot 164, restricted to Blenheim Court. 8, LPP obligations to be satisfied through dedicated of 1,691 square meters of land, those being, keeps shrinking on me. Those being from PIDs 252-973 and 302-68429. And 9, stormwater management plan be revised to include the stormwater sewer system for the reduced street right-of-way widths, as well as review any portion of the street where the grade is more than 6%, and to address ditching being directed till Hillcrest Holdings Limited property.
Thank you, Darren. Can I have a seconder on that? Mark,
Second.
on the question? Brenda?
More like a comment. Can we call it Blenheim and not a court? Because it's not a court anymore. Does that has to be in the, Dwight can answer that. Can we change the name without,
Dwight?
Yeah, so this actual street classification or a class type that can be changed from a court to a street to a, it's gonna be something that can happen on the subdivision, on the final subdivision plan.
Is that okay, Mr. Bishop, to do that? You're okay with that?
Sure.
Oops, sorry, Dwight, yeah. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, what we actually check is mainly the name itself. So make sure there's no conflicts with that, and there's no conflicts with the actual name, whether it's a court or a street. If there was a conflict with the actual name, it wouldn't have gotten that far. So the actual, whether it's a court or street or a road or laneway or way, that's something we can figure out.
I thought we discussed, wait, did you not mention we're going to extend Kingsway up to Squire? Is that not the plan? Or did I misinterpret that? And take Kingsway right up and around and number it that way? Or did I misinterpret what you had said earlier? Oh, sorry. I thought we were going to take Kingsway Drive and continue it right up to Squire, or did I misinterpret what was discussed earlier?
Through Mr. Chair, when we look at the layout, it would be more conducive to civic numbering and just clarity if Kingsway were to end where it's on this plan. Because then Blenheim can carry all the way down into adjoining property.
seconder for that, did we? Yeah, Mark, you okay with all the changes? Okay, any further questions? Okay, please vote. Motion carried by a vote of 5-0. Congratulations. Next 5 to 7 business days, you have a letter in the mail. Please work with the town and have all necessary documentation in place prior to, and getting the final plan amended and done. So good luck and best, and congratulations coming up with that idea to make that solution. So works. Appreciate you working with the town. Move on to item 7H. Fernwood Park, Phase 6, tentative subdivision plan, Diggle Drive to Meadowlark Drive. Please come up, state your name for the record.
Peter Donovan.
Peter Donovan. Dwight, you want to introduce the topic, please?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to PAC. So the planning has received the tentative plan for the development of the parcel that's before you, situated between Daigle Drive, Meadowlark, and the Gondola Point Arterial. It's the proposed plans to create, I remember I lost track, I think it's like 36 or 37 single-family resident, single-family dwelling, single-family lots, public street. The plan is before PAC, as PAC is aware that when you create a public street or any land for public purposes, then PAC has to review the plan to make recommendations to the development officer prior to final approval and bringing it to council. In this particular situation, the public street would connect Daigle Drive to Meadowlark. It's a public street which requires a lot width or a street right-of-way width variance at its intersection with Meadowlark. It reduces down to 17 meters from the typical and required minimum of 20. In this particular location, again, at this point, there's no really concerns with that 3-meter variance. We believe that in terms of stormwater and what needs to be situated in that particular width it can be accommodated. The overall street layout, it introduces future streets that will provide access into the remnant parcel, which is key. If you were to take those away, then obviously the street length of Merlin Street and then what would happen in terms of the overall development of the remnant parcel, the access is being created at this point in time, which is an acceptable practice. In terms of the street, I want to draw PAC's attention to a couple of things. One, we don't have a centerline profile, so I can't say what the grades would be at this point in time. Something that would have to be considered as we move through the design process, unless the developer has that information or has some general information to assist at this point. I want to draw PAC's attention to the upper end of Daigle Drive, where the right-of-way width is extremely close to an existing home. So this home is an older home, and I believe the property owner has submitted some concerns with respect to the development. The proposed right-of-way is 1.91 meters away from the edge of the home. In my staff report, one of the recommendations that I've made is actually that the right-of-way width be reduced there as well as just at the other end, so that it doesn't have such an impact on the property. And I've also said in my staff report that given that this is actually going to be public right-of-way and it's abutting an existing house, it's actually the town's property that would be potentially transferred to the adjoining property owner to accommodate that particular area. I believe my understanding is that there's actually been some excavation done in that particular area, so we would have to look at how we could possibly reinstate or address that. I just think it's a significant impact to have a back slope that's 1.9 meters away. And there is an elevation drop from that property down to the road. There was some other concerns came in with respect to the connection and Deagle Drive when we look at the actual right-of-way location with respect to the Quispamsis Road and collector. It's about 60 meters, so that would be sort of a reasonable in terms of the volume of traffic. You know, you're within that 60-meter range of a collector street. So the traffic flow would obviously not be up Deagle, the full length of Deagle. It's actually closer to Quispamsis Road. And as I've always mentioned, in terms of when we get concerns about traffic, when we look at the actual traffic volumes that we have on our local streets, they're well below what Traffic Association of Canada or any classification would classify as high volume on local streets. Some of the require lot width variances, which I overlooked in my staff report in reviewing this, but because I have good staff and they make me look good, they pointed it out. So I give kudos to them. Lots 122, 123, 124, they're small. There's minor lot width variances of about 1.8, 1.6 meters. And the other item is 116. 116 has a lot depth of 30 meters, and I'm not sure as to why it was not pushed back the full 8 meters. You could just simply push it back the full 8 meters, and that would give you the full lot width. I'm not sure if that was carried over from a previous version of the plan, but in this particular case, I wouldn't sort of be asking for a variance. I would simply be asking that the property be pushed back to the full lot width of 38 meters. Land for public purposes proposed. Land for public purposes, and this one obviously, as I've stated in my staff report, is looking at providing a significant natural drainage area in land for public purposes area 2. As shown on the screen, this is sort of a natural drainage area that would be given to land for public purposes to protect that area as well as some connectivity into the remnant parcel. Along the backs, if you were to go look at land for public purposes 4 area, there's going to be a connection between land for public purposes 4 and land for public purposes 3. There's a strip of land that's going to run along the backs of the properties on Meadowlark Drive from lot 86 to 80, I believe. From a staff perspective, it's something that I would like to see actually included as part of this plan and established as we move forward. One of my biggies, I guess, from a planning perspective and looking at it in terms of the bylaws and to look at, to discuss one of the concerns, obviously, is what's been identified on the plan as possible wetland and delineation and really clarification on where all that sits. Obviously, any approval of development in this particular area would be subject to, Department of Environment. The area has been reviewed, and there was certain orders and certain things put in place during the course of the year. So clarification on where that stands obviously would be required, as well as looking at any development of the lots in terms of 117, 118, 119, where that wetland area actually resides. As PAC would be aware, the province provides opportunities for any developer to obviously do further wetland delineation to correct any current mapping that the province would use to establish what is wetland. One of the items in my staff report that I want to draw attention to, and this will obviously be something that PAC will have to take consideration, and it will be something that council will have to take into consideration as we move through the process, is I guess the tree clearing and what happened on that property prior to any approvals. And in my staff report, I've highlighted section 7 of the subdivision bylaw, which basically states that you know, in terms of tree cutting, you have to respect what is actually required and what's necessary to cut as part of the overall development. And council has the authority to require, you know, some sort of tree restoration and planting, some sort of scheme to mitigate those impacts. Obviously, it's council's decision in terms of the bylaw. Council has given that authority in the bylaw, but obviously PAC would have to give consideration and also offer recommendations on whether to support the use of that provision in our bylaw and offer comments to the development officer as the process moves forward into council. I will leave it there, Mr. Chairman, and open for any questions as you move through the process.
Thank you, Dwight. Mr. Donovan, you would have heard Dwight's comments. Anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to any comments from PAC members or the members of the public?
I have a question for Dwight.
Sure.
Under the stormwater section of the staff report, it states that we're required to retain. And I thought from previous conversations we had and what we did in phase 3B of Fernwood, was that we were going to allow that water to travel into basically into the LPP area. It just kind of conflicts a little bit with what we're trying to do with Department of Environment and local government if we have to retain upstream.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, obviously what has transpired and in terms of what was originally looked at, obviously the wetland mapping and all those provisions changed in terms of January 2020. So when we look at what was previously looked at and considered, now this particular area is possibly delineated as being a wetland. So obviously any proposals or anything of that nature in terms of stormwater management would have to go through the Department of Environment to review and approve. So the original plan was that the water would go through the land for public purposes and a channel that would take it down to the end, taking it down towards the Mud Lake area. You sort of see closer to the arterial, you'll have that sort of horseshoe blue area with an island in the middle. That's where the water was in terms of an overall stormwater management plan, moving down that route. But if it's wetland and delineated wetland, then obviously we have to look at what can be done and can't be done in terms of approvals and restrictions within that particular area. But at this stage, that's an engineering planning council assent decision. From a PAC perspective, we're looking at in terms of the streets, in terms of connectivity, and those land for public purposes, and those types of items and variances.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Donovan, somewhat, or?
Well, it just impacts how we design the subdivision. We typically don't end up at council till assent, and so it doesn't really give me the direction where I need to go with the design, which we usually do after the stage that we get tentative approval from PAC. But it's a conversation I can have with Dwight in the future.
Anyone from PAC have any questions for Mr. Donovan? Mr. Bishop?
Mr. Donovan, I believe it was back, I kind of was looking back through some of the minutes from the other meetings. I was through your subdivision today, looks great. Meadowlark, I think at one point we said that we wanted that connected out to the main road. I see it's connected, but it's closed off. My question is why?
Waiting in developer's agreement.
Well, I didn't hear the answer, sorry.
I'm just waiting for my developer's agreement.
Okay.
Once everything's in place, we'll open it back up.
Is that the rule where you have big?
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, can comment on that from a planning bylaw perspective. It's currently private property, so until the subdivision plan is filed, then at best to the municipality at this stage, that plan has not been filed, so it's still private property.
I have another question. So Dwight, through you, Mr. Chair, too, Dwight, the tree planting, item number 7 that you're talking about, so, you're asking the developer to submit a development plan of reforestation, or what their proposal is to plant trees for the ones that they've taken down? And do you have, I guess, an idea of what that might entail, I guess is my question.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that is something that's being requested, and obviously it would go back to the developer to submit what they would consider reasonable. That would come to me as planning, and then ultimately that would go to council as part of the assent. Whether council would want to move forward and actually utilize the provision of the bylaw that gives them the authority to request that, then obviously that plan would come from the developer to me and go to council to make a decision on what they would consider reasonable, given the volume of trees that were removed and what is actually reasonable in terms of the actual development itself. Like I said, this is something that's in our bylaw that if in 18 years I've been here, it's the first time I've looked at bringing it forward. And that's at a reflection of concerns and comments and things that have come back through staff and to some of the councillors.
I guess I agree. Did he do wrong? Yes, he did wrong. But to go randomly and reforest, as we know, when houses are built, you plant a tree and it's going to be in the wrong spot compared to where the person's going to want the tree to be. So I guess that's my concern, is the developer going through the expense of planting a bunch of randomly trees, or is there a set one tree per front of each house and a set, like you see in some subdivisions that have been planted to kind of make a straight line row of trees coming down a street, or what? I guess that's my question.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that's the intent, is for the developer to provide a plan. And at this stage, we're not looking at full seedlings going in and a complete reforestation as though it was a woodlot. It would be looking at what's the intended use of your streets. Is it like you're saying, two trees per lot on the front? Is it some planted along what would be LPP that are now, those trees are gone? And so yeah, it's a request to have a plan come that can reviewed, that we can generate a plan moving forward. Does it all have to happen prior to building permits issued? No. What is the timeline that we could see that go into a development agreement and fulfilled prior to the town taking over the infrastructure and at various stages through the development?
Thanks, Dwight. Any further questions from PAC? Anyone in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time. Is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? None being. Would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Is there anything else that PAC members need to put a motion for or against?
Mr. Chairman, one of my questions for staff was in regards to, I think it's 6 Deagle Drive. I guess the question, the elevation difference, I guess my concern is it really achievable without causing too much harm to that property? It just seems like, as I read it, it seems like there's a lot of concern, and I don't know if there's a lot of solutions achieved. I could be wrong in that question, but.
Dwight?
It's looking at, so you have an existing house and all of a sudden that was one time, like, you have to look at what the elevation and then what the difference was before, and now you have a right of way that comes within 1.9 meters of a property. So it's looking at, how do you mitigate that? Do you gentle the slope? Do you, it's the question that has to be looked at.
Darren, do you have something?
I guess I just had a question. Mr. Donovan, you made a comment. I didn't get a chance to write it down or have a look what item it pertained to, but about watercourse, about holding you up on your development. What was that again?
So if, in previous discussions with town staff, the intent for this area, rather than creating several ponds, as they were looking at several phases of a subdivision, several different developers, landowners, it seemed like there could be the potential for 4 or 5 ponds in the area. So when we did phase 3B, we had proposed a pond, and we ended up eliminating that pond with discussions from town staff, or back and forth between town staff. My belief was that we weren't going to have to do that. So in this situation, we'll lose lots to do retention, but we can always find a way to get creative.
Yeah, is that due to the new environmental laws that changed, Dwight, in 2020? Is that it created more wetland? Is that what happened? Or am I wrong there?
Yes, on January 1st, 2020, there was new mapping that was posted by the Department of Environment where there were additional wetland and wet areas identified. So again, this is, through you, Mr. Chairman, this is a sort of an engineering conversation, but that particular item, it's not saying that there needs to be more ponds and things created. It's basically sitting down, staff, and well as the developer and Department of Environment or whatever authorities need to be in that conversation to say what can and cannot be done and how can we address this issue before we actually make that decision of whether ponds and how we're going to address it, given what the changes have been.
Okay, so are you saying that the wetland plan we have up here is different than the wetland prior to January of 2020?
When we looked at 3B and the initial developments on the portions of Meadowlark. And through you, Mr. Chairman, as I've always sort of held, and when we use our tools, what's on the screen shows the wet areas, and we use these as a tool. So when subdivision plans come before us, we overlay them and we use this tool to say, okay, these are significant drainage channels.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they're not identified on Department of Environment wetland mapping or natural drainage courses, we go back to any developer and say, okay, can we protect these, or somehow can you incorporate these into your stormwater management plan so that you're working with nature versus working against it? So that was sort of the theory and the rationale behind looking at not creating a pond, but recognizing the flow through that area and just incorporating it into the stormwater management pond or stormwater management plan and taking it all the way down into that natural low-lying area closer to Mud Lake in that particular area, rather than creating, as Mr. Donovan has stated, 4 or 5 ponds in that particular area to hold water, to control release, and to mitigate flooding or damage. So it's stepping back to say, okay, what can we do under the current provisions and restrictions? And then moving forward that way.
Okay.
That's all I can basically offer at this point in time.
No, thank you. Okay, back to any member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Mark?
Mr. Chairman, I'll put a motion forward to the approval for the Fernwood Park subdivision phase number 6 tentative plan is seeking a recommendation with respect to 1, approving the proposed street layout and connection. 2, the granting of a 3.0 meter street right-of-way width with Merlin Drive at the intersection of Middlelark Drive. Number 3, a reduction in the street right-of-way width at Diggles Drive adjacent to 6 Diggle Drive based on an engineer design that established the minimum width required to accommodate the street and public infrastructure and the excess land from the 20.0 meter width right-of-way as proposed consolidated with the property at 6 Diggle Drive. The remediation, sorry, am I in the right place here? Okay. Yep, the remediation of any excavated land adjacent to 6 Diggle Drive to the street line of the engineering right-of-way with a finished slope ratio as determined acceptable by the town engineering department. Number 5, the suitability of the land proposed for LPP and approval thereof. 6, extension of the municipal sewage system to provide for future servicing of lot number 18-1, 18-2, and lot B as shown in the tentative plan. 7, supporting the development officer and the council in requiring the submission of a tree planting and restoration plan prior to the issuance of a building permit that will detail how a reasonable number of trees will be replaced as part of the development and the full plan to be completed prior to final acceptance of the subdivision by the town. The tree planting and restoration plan shall cover the whole of PID 174441 and the subdividing thereof. Number 8, the subdivision of the tree planting and restoration plan to the PAC for review and recommendation to the council, and the council must accept the plan prior to granting assent to the final plan for any portion of phase 6 as outlined in the tentative plan. Number 9, the developer to submit approval from DOE permitting the undertaking of any further work on the subject property with failure to provide copies of such approval, rendering any tentative approval null and void. This is it, or do I have to read it?
No, we're good. Can I have a seconder on that? Brent?
I'll second that.
On the question? Please vote. Motion carried by a vote of 5-0. So in the next 5 to 7 business days, if you have a letter in the mail, Mr. Donovan, please work with the town and get all necessary paperwork in place and that tree planting schedule, and best of luck going forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Item 8, information and items or discussion. Can I have a motion to receive and file, please? Brenda?
So moved.
Can I have a seconder? Kendall?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Motion carried 5-0. Move on to item 9. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Mr. Bishop?
So moved.
Can I have a seconder on that? Mr. Goslin? Second. All right.